Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Talk Spicy. I'm Coach Gene Clemens. Thank you for joining me wherever you are joining me. Rate the show, comment, agree, disagree, but whatever you do, keep it spicy. 5-star ratings are appreciated. And if you're joining me from my YouTube channel, rate the show. Hit that like, hit that subscribe. We always appreciate it. I'm wondering, in sports and probably to a larger extent in life as well, when is a penance paid? Nobody's perfect. We've all done things we're not proud of, and we hope that those things that we do don't define us for the rest of our lives. And for many of us in the private world, we've been afforded the opportunity to have colossal mess ups that don't affect our ability to then continue on and succeed in life. But when you're a public figure, i.e. an athlete, it seems that there is no statute of limitation on how long people can hold mistakes that you've made over your head. For example, all of the texts or the emails or especially like the tweets that come out where people are being chastised or being fired over things that they said or did 10 years ago, 5 years ago. I'm really more concerned about who you are now, but I want that to be universal. So I want everybody to be afforded the same opportunities universally. Now, obviously, there are some things that we never forget, that we never get over. But that doesn't mean that someone hasn't paid their penalty for whatever that was. Recently, it's been the hiring of, surprise, surprise, these former basketball players as head coaches. We look at Jason Kidd's situation where, as it stands, 19 to almost 20 years ago, had a domestic dispute with his wife, one where he admitted to wrongdoing, that he went into counseling for, that he paid a heavy penalty at that point in time, something that scarred him or put him in a negative light for a long time. But we never really heard anything about it. We didn't hear people actively talking about, oh my gosh, why did Jason Kidd get that first head coaching job? Oh my gosh, why does Jason Kidd now the assistant coach? But then just recently, when Jason Kidd was up for the job with the Portland Trail Blazers, there was a media member who came out and brought up the issues that he had almost 20 years ago. Now, to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, and I'm sure if I am, someone's going to come and tell me that I'm wrong. Jason Kidd has not been in any trouble in the past 20 years. According to my knowledge, from what I know, he hasn't been in any trouble, any domestic issues, any law, any issues at all in the last 20 years. But this journalist decided that it was the time for her to stand on her principle and say that she was no longer, if he would have been hired with the Trailblazers because of her background and the things that she dealt with domestic violence, she would have had to possibly quit her job, which I thought was interesting, but okay. Then she said, well, since he got the job in Dallas, I am now not going to cover any of the games where they play Dallas. And I thought that was very interesting because in a sense, she's saying that she's not going to cover it because Jason Kidd's there and she doesn't agree with the fact that he still gets the opportunity to be a head coach, even though that incident was 20 years ago. And 20 years ago, she wasn't in sports. It didn't have anything to do with her. She's never had any interactions with Jason Kidd. And here's the biggest thing. When Jason Kidd has been the assistant coach for the Lakers and she was still covering the games, she didn't all of a sudden not cover the Laker games. Not to my knowledge. If I'm wrong, I'm sure someone will tell me I'm wrong and tell me I'm insensitive. So why is it now? When I read her thread, it struck me because it was all about her and not actually about Jason Kidd. Because Jason Kidd has not committed any crimes. Because the last thing that happened to Jason Kidd, the incident that he did, the incident that he took responsibility for and he got what was given to him, was 20 years ago. So it was interesting that after 20 years, he still has to be drugged through the mud about who he is as a person 20 years later. What's the statute of limitation? When is the penance paid? That's what I always wonder. Then we go to Chauncey Billups. Chauncey Billups does become the coach of the Trailblazers. And people talk about an incident that he had, which was an allegation that was then settled out of court. And that was well over 20 years ago. He settled it out of court. And so because he settled it out of court, because it never went to court, it's all of a sudden assumed that he must be guilty because he settled it out of court. I even heard one person say that, well, if you settle out of court, that means that you're guilty. No, it doesn't. So many celebrities settle cases out of court because it's worth more to them to not have to deal with all of the drama than it is to keep fighting and have to go through all of the scrutiny from what? The media. Sometimes they just settle it out of court to make it disappear so that they don't have to deal with the situation. It doesn't necessarily mean they're guilty. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're innocent either. But you definitely can't assume that they're guilty. When corporations settle out of court, they don't do so because they are 100% guilty. They just don't want all of their business put out there in the public. But nobody ever admonishes them after the fact. So what's the statute of limitation? Because we're not talking about two gentlemen who have had a history or a checkered past or things that you can look at several different instances. There's no pattern of behavior that tells you this is who these people are, that they deserve to be shunned from the NBA as coaches or as executives because they're bad people. What we have are isolated incidents, one for one person, one for the other person, that happened longer than some of the players in the league have been alive. So at what point can they say, you know what, I paid that debt to society. I paid that penance. It's done. Because if we always are able to bring up the negative thing that somebody did for their entire life, how are we any better? Where is the rehabilitation that we supposedly love? Where's the comeback that we're supposed to love? Michael Vick to this day still gets called a horrible person and a dog killer. That man went to jail. That man lost his livelihood. He lost hundreds of millions of dollars. He lost the opportunity to go down as a Hall of Famer. He lost the prime years of his life to something that was horrible. He paid that penance. And yet people still can't just allow him to live without bringing up that thing that he did that was awful that one time so many years ago. When is the penance? When is the penance paid? When can we say we've moved beyond that? And if we do say we moved beyond that, why are we ridiculed for moving beyond that? If I say, hey, listen, that was in the past, far, far in the past, I'm not going to focus on that anymore. Why should I be ridiculed? Why should I be as like, oh, well, you just don't care? It's not that I don't care. It's just that I can understand that mistakes can be made, people can learn, people can improve, and people are different. Someone's going to be different than they were 20 years ago. Hopefully, they've grown. Hopefully, they've matured. Hopefully, they've improved. I believe that in all situations, not just in one. I don't believe that someone who lies on someone should be automatically, degraded their entire life. So if I don't believe that someone who lies on someone else should be degraded for their entire life, why would I then believe someone who perpetrated a crime and paid their penance, or who didn't even perpetrate a crime, just was caught up in an allegation? Why is that still brought up 20 years later? Doesn't make any sense to me. On Kobe Bryant's death, someone had the nerve to bring up the fact that he was caught up in a scandal. That was on his deathbed. That was after he had passed away. That was on the heels of him doing years upon years upon years of great philanthropic work, of him being the model for the person who stands up for women's rights, who stands up for, especially for women in sports and empowering women in sports, because that was his lane. And someone still couldn't resist bringing up something that happened to him many, many years ago. I don't understand. When is the penance paid? Even in death, he couldn't be celebrated specifically for his triumphs in life. Someone had to bring up that one black mark in his life. Not the 27 black marks in his life, not the 15, not the 5, the one time. When is the penance paid? And if the penance is never paid, we're going to be really short on people. We're going to be really, really short on people. Because then it opens up the Pandora's box. Okay, well, which incidents are enough that it excludes that person from ever achieving that job? Because the argument is, well, Jason Kidd should have the opportunity to live his life. He should just not have the opportunity to coach, to be a head basketball coach. Really? So if he can't do something that he's spent his entire life becoming an expert at, then what do you want him to do? You want him to go work at a bank? Like, what kind of sense does that make? If the banker does the same thing, they can get another opportunity to be a banker. Nobody tells them, oh, you can never be a banker again. That's silly. And why should it even matter? At the end of the day, Jason Kidd, Chauncey Billups, they work in a field where they deal with men exclusively on a court. Their dealings with females would be in the media, would be in front offices, would be in business meetings. And guess what they've been doing for the past 20 to 30 years without any incidents? Dealing with women. So why should it be any different now? It shouldn't. Because there should be a point where we say the penance has been paid. Because we would want someone to give us that same courtesy if we ever had a moment where we did something that was less than flattering or flat out wrong. We can't be hypocrites in this thing. Nobody's perfect. Before I get out of here, I had something else that I thought was really interesting to me. I heard somebody say something about Becky Hammond and the Portland had the opportunity to hire the first, female basketball coach. And I kept thinking to myself, like, I like Becky Hammond a lot. I'm not saying that Becky Hammond couldn't be a really good NBA head coach. I thought Kara Lawson could project in that same way. I really, really respect Kara Lawson and how she goes about her business. I thought she was one of the best basketball analysts in the world. But what makes Becky Hammond more qualified than Jason Kidd, than Chauncey Billups? Essentially, these are her contemporaries because they're doing the same job that she's doing. They've worked themselves up the way that she's worked herself up. Every single day, we see highly qualified Black men who played the game in the NBA get passed up for jobs. And nobody goes, oh my God, I can't believe he didn't get a job. Why should it be any different for Becky Hammond? In essence, the fact that she's being passed over or that she's losing out on jobs to other qualified head coaches or guys that are going to be head coaches. Notice I didn't say to more qualified. I said other qualified is actually a compliment because those same guys have been losing out to jobs from people who were nowhere near as qualified as they were. So do I think that Becky Hammond's time is coming if she wants to wait? I guess. But Patrick Ewing got tired of waiting. He sat on the benches of several coaches. He was waiting for the call, never got it. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar got tired of waiting. He sat around. He's one of the most intelligent basketball minds to ever come through, and yet could never get a head coaching job. John Starks has been cutting his teeth as a coach. He didn't just sit back on and be the third assistant or the fourth assistant and try to work his way up that way. He's an actual head coach. He's had a lot of success at the G League level. There have been so many other coaches in the past who've come from other leagues or other levels to get head coaching jobs. Why not John Starks? So it's not a diss on Becky Hammond that she has not been given this opportunity. I want her to get an opportunity. I want her to get the same type of opportunity that everybody else gets. I want to get the same type of opportunity that everybody else gets. But you're not going to tell me that Chauncey Billups didn't deserve the opportunity. You're not going to tell me that Jason Kidd didn't deserve the opportunity just because Becky Hammond was one of the people. If we're really being honest about it, Dawn Staley deserves an opportunity more than Becky Hammond does because she has proven winning pedigree as a head basketball coach. Becky Hammond, it's all theory. We don't know how good she is as a head basketball coach. We're really going to take because she won a summer league as the really? If you give me Becky Hammond as head basketball coach versus Dawn Staley as head basketball coach, I close my eyes, I take Dawn Staley, I don't even think twice about it. Why? Because I've seen her do it. And she's got game enough that no guy could question who she was as a basketball player. But she's humble enough to understand that she doesn't know everything. Becky Hammond cut from very similar cloth. Can't say that she wouldn't do a great job. But I can't say Chauncey Billups isn't going to do a great job. I can't say Jason Kidd's not going to do a great job. We've seen them develop people. So she's in that same boat. I don't feel any type of way about it. Could she have been the head basketball coach for the Portland Trail Blazers? Yes. Could she have been the head basketball coach for the Dallas Mavericks? Yes. Could she be the head coach in Orlando? Yes. Will she be? I don't know. Because the same people who don't want to hire certain coaches, they're still in power. So let's stop doing this thing where we dim other people's lights because we want to illuminate our person. We have to be better than that. We need to be better than that. We will be better than that. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Talk Spicy. I'm Coach Gene Clemens. Thank you for joining me. We do this thing a couple times a week. Rate the show, comment, agree, disagree. But whatever you do, keep it spicy. 5-star ratings are appreciated. And if you're joining me on my YouTube channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment. We'll see you next time. Peace.